Hello, hello.
Hello?
Hello. What do you got? You called
Yes.
me out in YouTube chat and you said something about
Yeah,
moral.
several
Yeah.
times. Sorry.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Can you hear me?
loud and clear.
Can you hear me? Hello.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Cool. Cool. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool.
All right. So, just real quick, I want to say that I'm excited to talk to you, and I really appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay. So, this is what I got. So quick question. So I know that your stance on morality is like morality doesn't exist. It's not objective because it can't be objective because it doesn't exist. Is
Or
that
like
right?
there's no such thing as like a moral fact. So like I mean like we can talk about like morality quote unquote existing such that we can make like moral systems and stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be like anti-realist insofar as morality is concerned. There's not going to be like a way to discern like one moral fact from another because I don't think moral facts are real. Are you
Mm-hmm.
serious?
Okay. Would so quick question. If God were real, would you see a case where it could be possible for morality
Imagine
to be
ever
objective or
making
still
fucking
no?
potions in this fucking game. How worthless. You said if God is real, would you imagine say that one more time?
Yeah. If God were real, could you like I know that's kind of vague, but God were real, could you imagine a scenario where morality could actually be objective?
I mean, if there was a god by definition, right? Because don't gods typically command things like morality? Or, I mean, if he said anything, I would imagine it would be true, right?
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna try and lay out a framework here for a uh, objective morality being real with God being a certain way. So let me explain here. Okay, so I'm gonna lay out a bunch of ifs, a bunch of kind of like hypothetical. So let's say God exists. God's goal is to be happy himself. He to be happy to achieve that end. He wants to have a relationship with us and have us grow and be happy ourselves.
Okay.
Um,
Well, hold on, wait. The god part is
sure.
pretty important here. I feel like if I accept the existence of a god, then it's pretty easy to get from there to some sort of morality, right? But isn't that the part you'd have to win me over on first?
Right. Well, so actually, I'm going to do this backwards. So first, I'm going to kind of lay out the framework, and then once I've laid the framework out, because I want to be specific about what I mean here. Then once I've laid the framework out, then I want to make the case for why I think you should believe it.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah. So this is all hypothetical. God exists. He wants to be happy. He wants to achieve happiness through having a relationship with us. Um, and so to that end, he wants us. He creates us, and he wants us to grow and be happy and ourselves. And the reason that we have to grow ourselves is to have a better quality relationship with him. Where if we're just like kind of selfish, immature people, then he's kind of limited in how good of a relationship he can have with us, how meaningful it can be. So he wants us to grow to be more like him, so we can have a more higher quality relationship. Um, so to that end, he creates the universe, he creates us, and then gives us a pathway in life to follow. And he says, hey, if you follow this pathway, then you will grow, you will mature, you will be happy, and then we can have that relationship and we can both be happy. So then from that perspective, from that framework, morality becomes objective in that how your actions align with this pathway kind of by definition will result in either your greatest happiness or I guess greatest suffering or least amount of happiness. So then there's an objective standard by which to judge your actions, which in effect makes morality objective. Does that kind of make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess, but we're still at the part where it's like, okay, how do we? You got to get me on board with the God part for me to buy into any of this, right?
Right, but to start off with, this seems like kind of not an illogical, like a logical framework that if it did exist, this
If
would
God was
be
real, I would imagine whatever set of morals he would inscribe in our hearts or that exist in the universe would probably optimize us for happiness. Because what is happiness if not the most moral life under God, right? I would imagine.
okay. So, um, do you agree then that God's existence is an important question? Because with us, like I would say, your and my goal in life is the same. You want to be happy. I want to be happy. So then, if this pathway exists, if this was why we were created, to go down this pathway and to have a relationship with God, and that's the greatest path to happiness, then this is almost infinitely valuable information that we should try to find out. So my point is that if we are seeking happiness and we know that it's possible that this pathway is out there, then we should do our best to find out whether or not it is real, whether or not God is real.
Yeah, of course.
Would you agree with that? Okay. So then, what I would say is, so you kind of have the stance that it's not possible to know whether God exists. Would I say that's
Yeah, it doesn't
accurate?
seem to be the case. Yeah.
Okay. So I would say if God exists, then he's obviously choosing to be invisible at this stage, and I would argue that there are good reasons for that. But for now, we can just say that, assume that if he is real and he is a good God, then there's probably a good reason why he chooses to stay invisible.
Okay.
But if his goal is to have a relationship with us, if that's his explicit purpose in creating us, then if we reach out to him in a meaningful, sincere way and say, hey, God, if you are real, then please show me, I believe it's logical that he would find a way to answer us and like reach out to a way that's meaningful to you, personal to you, touches your heart, to show like, hey, that's I am real, I do exist, this is me.
Okay.
Don't you think that would make sense?
I mean, it depends, but some religious people would say that like you're testing God at that point, and God isn't going to show himself. Like it's a test as a response to a human test, because you're supposed to have more faith in that. But I mean, maybe I believe in a world that exists where what you're saying is true.
So I would say that my understanding of not testing God, I mean, the example that comes to mind from the Christian perspective is like when Satan is trying to tempt Jesus in the desert, and he says, throw yourself off this cliff because the angels will save you. And then Jesus says, you're not supposed to test God that way.
Yeah.
I'd say that's a test. But I think just asking God if he's real, I wouldn't say is testing God. You're just seeking him out. So, and then, wait, what was it? There was another thing you said, testing, and then was there something you said after that? I kind of lost track.
Well, I'll agree with you for the sake of the argument. Sure, God would hopefully reveal himself to us in some way if he was real, right?
Okay, so then what I would challenge you, Destiny, to do is, if you acknowledge that God's existence is important, if you acknowledge that doing this has a good chance of resulting in finding out whether or not God is real, then you should do it. I'm challenging you, Destiny, to essentially pray to God and ask if he's real.
Well, why do you assume I haven't done this?
Okay, so I'm sorry. I should have asked that.
Yeah, I've done it. I grew up Catholic. I went
Right.
to Catholic grade school for 8 years, and then I went to a Catholic high school for 4 years. So, I mean, I've spent a great deal of my life praying and all that shit and looking for God and all that, right? I did that as a child.
Mm-hmm. So you would say that you have spent a lot of time and effort praying to God and ask if he is real, and you would say that he hasn't answered you?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So here's where it gets tricky, because I had a similar conversation with my brother, and he said a similar thing. And so I would say there's two ways to explore God's existence and explore the existence of this pathway that I described. So when you pray to God and ask if he is real, it seems like there is a barrier there, because if everyone could just ask once, hey God, are you real? And then he showed himself to you, then I think a lot more people would believe in God. It would be a lot more obvious. But for whatever reason, it seems to be true that it takes more than one time asking God for him to answer you. And so the question is why is that barrier there? And then what does it take to break said barrier? And I would say that the reason that barrier is there is because of the fall, where, at the beginning, if you look in Genesis, before the fall occurs, God freely talks with Adam and Eve and says that, he talks to them freely, gives them commandments, and says various things. And so it seems communication was very easy. But since the fall occurred and sin entered this world, we have generated a large amount of distance between us and God. So we're kind of starting off on the wrong foot as people with original sin, where we need to make more effort. Kind of the default is we're disconnected from God, that we have to make more effort to overcome that barrier and reconnect with God. So it seems like it takes some amount of effort to do this. Now, the problem is have you heard of the halting problem?
Nope.
Okay, so my brother told me about this. It's an interesting idea where um, this is like the question of you have a computer program and you have to make an algorithm that studies the program and tries to determine how long the program is going to take. And I think Alan Turing proved that it is impossible to make an algorithm that can accurately judge
Yeah,
every
yeah. I
conceivable
think
program.
I think I've heard of this before. Yeah, a long time
Okay,
ago. Yeah. Okay.
so this is it's kind of related in that as a person with imperfect knowledge, both me and you, I can't tell you how many prayers it's going to take to get the answer you need. But if he is real, then obviously it takes. I don't want to be insensitive because I have no idea how much you have and how much effort you've made. I'm not trying to be insensitive. I say that it seems like whatever the amount that any of us have made, it takes more than uh, what you've currently given.
Okay. Couldn't
Okay.
you literally make the same argument about literally anything?
Well, what do
Like
you
I
mean?
could say aliens are real, you just haven't looked for them enough, or I could say some other god was real, you just haven't looked for him enough, or I could say that like voices in your head are real, you just haven't like looked at them. Like, couldn't I make this argument about literally anything?
You could. The difference, though, is that I would argue there's a lot more evidence for the Christian God than for other possible varieties. Well, one, I kind of laid out at the beginning. I laid out a framework by which morality, like objective morality, would be real, and so I think you would kind of be the onus is on you to make a counter as to what would make logical sense for why this world exists and why I guess objective morality, if it does exist, why that exists. You would have to do that, but from the framework of your aliens or whatever. And then two,
Well, you can't, but you've like worked backwards. So I mean, of course, everything you're saying is true, right?
no, but my point is I made like a framework that's I would argue is fairly logical.
Well, it's logical
like,
because you already started off assuming all the hard questions, right?
Well, no, that's whether something is logical doesn't mean whether or not these ifs are true. I'm just saying they follow kind of a logical.
Yeah, logical
progression.
just means it deductively follows, but you can make anything deductively follow. That's really easy to do, right?
Well, I wouldn't say that what I said like I wouldn't say they deductively followed from each other because they're not like strict. Like I wouldn't say that because God created us, then therefore He has to have wanted a relationship with us. I wouldn't say that deductively follows. I would just say it's kind of a list of steps that kind of
Well,
are
it
conceivable.
deductively follows because like your conclusion leads naturally from the premises. But like making something deductively true is simple, right? I could say, for instance, my conclusion is that all humans can fly, and then you tell me, oh, well, how? And I'll say, well, like let's assume that all humans are things that exist, and let's assume that all humans have wings. Let's assume that all things with wings can fly. Therefore, all humans can fly. Well, look, I've created something that's deductively true. So unless you can present to me something the opposite of that, but like, okay, sure, you've given me something that's deductively true. The argument is valid. But if I'm challenging you on the soundness of the argument, on whether the premises are true, is there a God? Well, that's a far more difficult part of the argument. But that's like where all the arguing is done from, right? If we start with a premise that God is true or real, well, of course, I can from there prove almost anything related to God or morality, right?
So what I'm trying to say is that if you want to argue, so you asked why, like basically you asked why should you pray to the God that I think you should pray to, and not pray to any other imaginary thing. And I'm saying, if you have if you genuinely mean that, then you would need to kind of one show me what concept you have. Like I think, we exist because aliens made us, and because you could go like the what is it the Scientologist route if you want to go for why why we exist. You use their explanation. We have to come up with some sort of framework and then say what evidence is there for this. And I would argue that the evidence for the Christian God, like there are, not to appeal to numbers, but there are like 2.5 billion Christians in the world, and they are the largest religion, and a large number, I would argue a large number of them will like personally testify to experiencing God and Jesus working in their lives. And I think that doesn't necessarily prove that the Christian God is real, but I think that is evidence towards it. And I
I mean,
think
it's evidence of something. I don't think that's evidence of like a God existing, though.
Well, what do you mean? If you have billions of people arguing that they sincerely believe that a specific God exists and that they see Him at work in their lives, that is evidence for a specific God. I wouldn't say it's proof, but I would say it's evidence.
How is it How is it evidence? Just because people believe in a thing doesn't necessarily make the thing.
Well, it's testimony. If someone gives like testimony to something, like in court, testimony is a thing. Testimony is evidence. Like when people say, I experienced this, that is greater than 0% evidence that actually did occur. I'm not saying it proves it, but I'm saying it's evidence. It argues in favor of it.
Okay, all right, well, I guess I'll keep it in mind. I'll think about praying for things, I guess. There's nothing I can respond to. You're basically telling me that, like, I can try praying for something and then we'll see what happens, I guess, yeah?
Well, I mean, what are you going to pray for?
I mean, nothing. You haven't given me anything. Like, what am I?
I didn't give you something. I said, pray to God. Well, I don't know if I didn't make it clear enough, but just pray to God. Say, hey, God, are you real? If so, then please show me.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind, okay?
You're going to keep it in mind?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. I would say there's one other way to test it.
What's the other way to test it?
The other way to test it is if there is a proposed pathway. Like if this pathway does exist, if someone proposes, hey, I think it's this pathway, well then we could test it either ourselves personally or see other people's experiences with this pathway, whether or not it leads to a happy life for them. That would be evidence for or against that pathway being the genuine one.
I have no idea what pathway you're talking about.
Okay, so I haven't described what pathway yet, but I mean, do you want me to describe?
Here, listen, I'll try praying first, and then you can come back in a month, and we'll see if I've made any progress there. Okay?
You want me to come back in a month?
Yeah, and we'll talk about.
Oh.
We'll see if I've made any progress. Okay?
Okay. Do you not want to hear the pathway, or do you want to wait till later?
I'll wait till later. Okay?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. All right. I love you, buddy. Okay?
Yep. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye. Okay. That was a thing. I need to stop fighting bosses in the daylight.
Listen to our favorite president here. The only great replacement happenings is YouTube chat replacing DGG. Big Chat, keep hope alive. Destiny will be conservative one day. Only you can fix him, OBMAL.